The opening weekend of the Six Nations is nearly upon us, and the first game on the Saturday is Scotland against Italy. Hello, amateurs, and welcome back to our Six Nations series. And I've got another fantastic guest with me today. I met this man on the Great Rugby Run in 2023. It's Mr. Chris Burns. Chris, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks, Tim. How are you? You good?
Very well, absolutely fantastic. Now then, we are here to talk about Scotland, Italy, and have a little bit of a pre-match preview here. But before we jump into the selections, which have just been announced very recently, tell me, Chris, how are you feeling about Scotland's chances coming into the Six Nations? Has Gregor got you excited for what's lying ahead?
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm getting older. I'm pessimistic. I grew up with a Scotland team that didn't score a try for 15 months in a row, so I know the pain of watching that. And as talented and as exciting as our squad are, history has told me, the past 3-4 years have told me that we often disappoint, unfortunately. We've got 2 or 3 big performances in us and then we let ourselves down. So I don't want to be pessimistic. I'm not normally that type of fan, but I think last year, a couple of the results last year, they were really hard to take. So I hope to be proved wrong, but I just don't think we've got it in us to go all the way, unfortunately.
And what about the blow of losing Sione Tuipulotu as well? Has that affected your mood as well?
Massively. I think I opened up Instagram and it was like the first thing that was on my feed. You know, misses Six Nations, out for 5 months. I was like, oh, come on. Like, what is going on? The one thing I also, though, when I thought about it, it's actually one of the positions of the team where we've actually got decent depth. Now, obviously, arguably the form 12 in the world right now. I mean, he's absolutely tearing it up for Glasgow and for Scotland. He's proven at every level. But I would say that the 12 position, you know, we've got a few options there. So it's not as big a drop off. You know, we've actually got a few guys that can step up. They're never going to be at his level, but it's not quite the disaster that I initially thought it was, although he's always going to be a huge, especially captain as well, he's going to be a huge loss for us.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point, actually. I hadn't even considered the fact that he was captain as well. Okay, let's go into the teams. As I said, just announced very recently. We'll look at the Scotland team first and the forwards. I guess this is much of what was expected, apart from maybe at hooker, where Dave Cherry gets the nod over Ewan Ashman. What are you making of that?
Very strange. Yeah, I don't know what brought that on. I think because I've seen Ashman play his club rugby as well. I think he's been tearing it up. I think he's physical. His line-out throwing's good. You've seen his physicality against South Africa in the Open. You know, he was really bringing it. He carries and in defence. I know most hookers are like this, but he's more of like an extra back row. The way he gets about the park and really gets involved at the breakdown. I don't really think Dave Cherry brings that to the game. So I was quite surprised to see that. I was very happy to see Johnny Gray back in the team. I just think he's a test match player. You know, he just brings so much to the game in terms of his tackling and his physicality. So I was really happy to see him back in the team. But apart from that, I was actually quite surprised that Dempsey didn't get the nod at number 8. Fagerson got in ahead of him. That was quite surprising. I don't know if there's been an injury there or if it's just on form or just picking for the game plan or whatever. But I did think Dempsey was going to be a stick on at number 8. He played well in the autumn. So, but I mean, Fagerson's a great player. He's he's a great ball carrier. Links up well with the backs and the pods. So yeah, it looks like a strong pack. I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, it is a very strong pack, and like a few teams now in the Six Nations, Scotland just feel very settled. There's a lot of players there who've played a lot of games together, and if you slot 1 or 2 extras in, it shouldn't destabilise the ship at all. I'm wondering on the Cherry thing, whether they might be doing something a little bit clever, and maybe he'll start, but maybe he'll know that he might be getting subbed off in the first half. We've seen that with a few teams recently with front row players, or maybe Ashman's got a slight niggle or something. Who knows? But it does seem like a strange selection.
It does. I mean, maybe they're going like the kind of South Africa route. when they bring on Malcolm Marks, who's just a freak of a player, but he's always on the bench for some reason. I mean, maybe they're going down that route. I don't know. But the one that I'll say about this is, when I know we're still to get to it, but when we get to the bench, it's probably one of the strongest benches I've seen for Scotland in a long time, which is more encouraging, because I think that's been one of our biggest weaknesses, is when the game gets, or the game or the tournament gets a bit further on, and they're starting 15, maybe pick up niggles, or they've got to come off. A lot of the times I've not really had the strength and depth to come on to the park, like, put a game away, or, get us over the hump if we're a few points behind. So that's quite encouraging to see. I mean, if you've got Ashman coming off the bench in the second half, that's not something you'd probably want to see if you're the opposition coming off to get stuck into you. So no, pack looks good. I like it.
Yeah, happy days. Okay, let's move on to the backs. And this is, I think, pretty much what most people would have expected. Stafford McDowell getting the nod at 12 over people like Rory Hutchinson. And in the comments on the previous videos, a lot of people were suggesting that Tom Jordan might get the nod as well in the 12 shirt. But it's McDowell that gets it. Massive physical presence and a good all-round footballer as well.
Yeah, he is. I think that's probably what's given, because I think him and Hutchison are quite similar players. Like McDowell's a good footballer. He can actually, he kicks pretty well. He can, and good hands and stuff. As much as he's a big physical player, kind of like two blokes in a way. I think Hutchison is a great. I watch him a lot for Northampton. I really like him. I think he's a silky player, and really pulls some really nice stuff out the bag. But I just think McDowell's got the edge there in terms of his physicality, and we've got obviously Finn Russell, who can, who's silky enough for the whole team, I think. But no, I really like McDowell. He plays great for Glasgow. He captained Scotland in November against Portugal as well. So yeah, I mean, the backs are, I can't believe I'm saying this as a Scotland fan, the backs are just electric now. What we can do. I mean, that back three, I think after the Australia game, a lot of the chat was like, that back three should be the Lions back three. There's still a long way to go selection, but I think the way although I would say, I think Van der Merwe has been a little bit off the boil a little bit recently. I think he's, in November he was good, but he wasn't his destructive best. As much as he scored a couple of tries, I believe he scored a couple of tries anyway. Normally he's runs in off the wing where he's just like bumping boys off and making meters. There wasn't as much of that. Now maybe he's just been marshalled better by the opposition and people know what's coming, of course. But I'd like to see him get back to being really, really destructive, and causing a lot of problems for the opposition. But apart from that, love, basically Kinghorn at 15. He's been looking forward to seeing him at 15 for a long time. Obviously, Stuart Hogg had that jersey, but now that he's kind of got it nailed down, I think, he's going to be he's going to be key for us going forward, especially with the new high ball rules. The pursuit and things like that. He's got to really have to be solid under that high ball, and he's going to have an opportunity to run it back. Which is where he really shines.
Yeah, for sure. If Van der Merwe doesn't start playing well this week, then I'm pretty sure he will against England at some point, because he tends to do that. Okay, looking at the bench, as we mentioned earlier, Ewan Ashman, along with Rory Sutherland and Will Hurd in the front row, Big Gregor Brown and Dempsey to cover the forwards, with a 5-3 split with Horn, Jordan and Rowe covering the backs. As you said, that is a pretty handy looking bench in lots of areas there.
It is, and I think the other good thing about it is when we pull on, we're actually going to have options to really change how we play if we need to. Like George Horn's a very different player from Ben White. George Horn's like electric. He's buzzing around. I think he's Glasgow's top European try scorer. He's been tearing it up for Glasgow. In the Champions Cup in the URC. He's been really pulling strings, and he starts for Glasgow, so he can. He's just not quite maybe got the edge on. I think Ben White, he is more of like a marshal, and I'd kind of back there. He's not going to have these, he's not going to be sniping around the ruck or anything like that. But his box kicking is elite, and he's got a great service to Russell. So, but I think if Horn comes on, he can really change the game. Again, Dempsey, if he comes on when the game's breaking up, we know that he can. His ball carrying, these lines are really strong. Tom Jordan had a really good autumn. I felt, he played well, first exposure to the international stage. He can cover 10, 12 and 15. So he's great. He's great to have there. And Kyle Rowe went well in the Six Nations last year. He's got pace to burn on the wing. So, yeah, like I said, it's comforting to know we've got some proper reinforcements to come on. And and see the game out.
Yeah, and again, just consistency of selection as well. A lot of people there that have played a lot of minutes for Scotland. So all of that really helps. Okay, let's move on to Italy and the forwards, which is, and similar to Scotland, a lot of very familiar names now, a lot of players that have played a lot of games together. They've gone for a sort of more lighter athletic second row with Lam and Rutzer. Do you think maybe they're going to try and get after Scotland's lineup because of that?
I think so. Yeah, but yeah, I was looking at the team before it came on, and yeah, I think like they're you could even say like their second row and their back row. There's a lot of pace there, a lot of pace. They're really going to get about the park, and like I said, in the line out, I think they'll be chucking two up as much as possible and just trying to get after us in the line out. I mean, our line out's been going pretty well, to be fair. We've got a few different options. But it's more like what I'm drawn to more is the back row, because if memory serves me right, and I've tried to wipe this game from my memory, but over in Rome last year, our back row were pretty destructive. They really got after us, and I think like a real strength of theirs over the past maybe 2 or 3 seasons. They can really hold their own in that back row. They steal a lot of ball. They're very physical, and they make a mess of slow the ball down a lot. So that'd be something that I think our back row have really got to be up for it. Richie and Rory Darge and the likes of them, they really need to be ready to meet fire with fire, because I just think they got the edge on us last year and it cost us big time.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing we haven't mentioned yet about the forward players is scrum, and I think Scotland would probably think they can take on this Italy pack in the scrum, certainly to start off with. So that'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, I think like you said, that the flip side of having maybe, like you say, more lighter, more athletic second rows is Scotland might go, okay, right, well, we'll really get after you in the scrum. I think our scrum has been, has been strong. It's performed well against the top teams. So yeah, I think hopefully we'll be able to get after them. And maybe it's like once you start getting pinged a couple of times, referees start to just if they see that one side's got the dominance, then that tends to be the way the game goes for the rest of the game. So hopefully we can assert that early doors and make that a real platform, because I mean we've got guys like Johnny Gray and stuff in the second row pushing. That's a pretty significant guy to be hammering in at the back of your front row. So yeah, it should be but Italy have traditionally got a pretty strong scrum, mind you. So you don't know. It'll be interesting to see how we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, into the backs. And I guess the big news here is that Tommy Allen, returning to the test fold, is getting picked at fullback, which is interesting. I guess maybe a second playmaker or a third, really, because Brex is an incredible playmaker as well in the centre. And then Capewotso on the wing. What are you making of that selection?
Yeah, you mean Tommaso Allen? He was Tommy Allen when he played with Scotland. He's Tommaso Allen now, I think. Says me, but 6 South Africans in the team, we can get all those jokes out of the way. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I've never known him to. I mean, I've watched him play a lot. I'm quite surprised that he's been picked at fullback. I mean, obviously, like he's an international rugby player and he's a good player. I just don't know if that. I mean, it's even more exposed than it used to be at fullback now. And I've never classed him as somebody that's got a lot of pace, but I could be wrong. He's maybe just because he's played 10. But I find that quite surprising, especially Capuzzo there. I mean, that's the boy that plays with Toulouse, isn't it? Capuzzo, I've got that right, haven't I?
Yeah.
I mean, he's electric at fullback. But I know he plays in the wing a lot for Toulouse, because obviously you get Ramos and Kinghorn at Toulouse, so he maybe doesn't get as much game time there. But the ones, see the 12 and 13, Meninchel and Brex, they're a really strong partnership. Especially Brex, I'm pretty sure he scored against us last year, and he really pulled the strings. He's another playmaker at 13. Really solid in defence. Meninchel is just an absolute man mountain. So yeah, although I noticed that they've dropped. Is it Varney, the kind of Welsh-born scrum half? He's been dropped. So I don't know anything about their 9. I've never heard of him before. And obviously Gabrisi's a proven quantity as well. So yeah, it is a pretty tasty backline. I always think they start slow though. That's the only thing about Italy. I always think they start a little bit slow. They don't really click. So it's whether they'll actually be able to do that and kind of unleash the weapons that they actually have. in the back line here, because it is scary stuff. If they get the ball out to Brex and he's linking up with Capuzzo and things, that's terrifying for any defence.
It definitely is. So a couple of things about the scrum half. They basically shared responsibilities during last Six Nations, all three of them. And they all had reasonable the amount of game time. And Pajrello came through as probably the better one during the last Six Nations. So he's sort of kept that shirt now. He seems to be number one choice. Alan, I think, also played a bit of fullback during last Six Nations as well. And I agree. I don't think he's the paciest, but then I don't think he's a slouch either. Like he's not, it's just compared to some, real whippets around him that he maybe doesn't look as quick. But I agree with the laws as they are in terms of no shielding anymore for sort of kicks. Like he might be exposed there because he's not the tallest. I don't think he's the most commanding under the high ball. So we'll see. It's a real interesting sort of tactical choice there to go with Tommaso, Alan, at fullback. To the bench.
Yeah. Sorry, no, I was just going to say, I just think when you match up our back three, if you're thinking about guys chasing through, if you've got Van der Merwe and Kinghorn, they're both 6'4". If they're charging, I think Capuzzo's not big. I just think we could have a slight edge there. If we get it right, if we're charging through and competing for the high ball, so that could be something we perhaps tactically look to exploit.
Yeah, definitely. Onto the bench, and this is all pretty much as expected, but 6-2 bench, which Italy quite often do, I think. Alessandro Garbisi, the scrum half replacement, and Gessi covering everything else. Again, this looks like a pretty strong bench to me. Like there's a lot of experience there. There's a lot of players that have got decent minutes for Italy. So it could be a sort of tight tussle towards the end of the game.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting they went for a 6-2 as well. I know they might go for that quite a lot, but maybe that tells you a little something about maybe how they see the game going later on. Especially if they've went with maybe a lighter second rows, lighter, more athletic second rows. Maybe perhaps are thinking later on they want to be, maybe try to establish a lead and then slow it down a little bit and pull us into more of an arm wrestle, perhaps. Yeah, like I say, strong bench. So yeah, that should be interesting.
Definitely. Okay, let's go back to this screen and let's talk about the game as a whole. The weather, I think, is due to be quite nice and fair in Edinburgh on Saturday, which is wonderful.
What else would it be?
Obviously. With two teams, and I think both these teams, when I look at them sort of tactically, the way they go about the game, in lots of ways, I think they match up fairly well. Like both teams like to move the ball. Both teams like to go through phases and play a lot of rugby if they can, if it's at the right time. So I feel like we might see a really entertaining game.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's actually interesting when you think about, we've actually kind of been on similar evolutions over the past. I think Scotland's happened a bit earlier compared to Italy's. We've been on it for a bit longer in terms of moving more towards a really expansive, entertaining team, running lots of tries and, taking a lot of risks and really playing on the edge. I think Italy have done that a little bit more maybe the past 2 or 3 seasons. They've really started to throw the ball around a lot more. They used to be associated with like the ball didn't get past 12. It was very, very kind of old school rugby. But I think, like you say now, they are a real danger. Like, I don't mean this disrespectfully. I don't think anybody was ever really that worried about Italy's backs. To be, they weren't really a massive threat. But now, as you've seen, the talent that they have there is outstanding. I mean, they've been hammering at the door for a while because under 20s have been doing really well for 2 or 3 seasons now, maybe even longer. So maybe that talent's starting to come through. But I think we are quite evenly matched and we play fairly similar. But you don't know what tactics if they're going to come out. I think everybody knows how Scotland's going to play. It's pretty well established. We've not, we play in the autumn as we have done for a long time now. It's the way we go about the game. But in terms of how Italy will approach it, like I said, their selection hints at a couple of things. But I think we are pretty evenly matched. I would say man for man, we probably have the edge across the board. But it's not as if it's a massive gap.
Yeah, I agree. I think Italy were definitely trying to make some changes through the autumn series, and they looked like they were a little bit not on the same page at times. There were uncharacteristic errors by players that normally don't make errors like that, and that said to me that they weren't quite sure what they were doing, or that the timing was a little bit off because they hadn't done it quite as much. If they iron all that out and get to a really consistent place in this fixture, I think this could be a really, really tight game.
I'm convinced it's going to be tight as well. The only thing that's maybe given me a bit of pause around Italy is, like I said, they do traditionally start quite slow in the Six Nations. And we actually start pretty well. We normally like start with a bang and then fade away, and we'll come out and we'll beat England or have this great performance, and then it's all this hype, and then it's just all downhill from there. So yeah, I think that might be a factor, but no, I think like I said, I think we played well in the autumn. I think we were not unlucky, but I think a couple of things going the other way against South Africa, and that result looks very, very different. I don't think the result, I know it's a cliche, didn't really reflect the game. The reason I'm bringing that up is because that's probably been our biggest test for quite a while, and I think we played, we played well. So yeah, I think if our backs can click the way they clicked against Australia, if we can show that type of attacking intent, then yeah. The only thing I feel like when I've watched Scotland the past couple of years, when games get a little scrappy, we really play into that, and we've got a lot of unforced errors, and we try and force things, and that's again something that kind of worries me, because I think the Italian back row is super scrappy and they just mess up your ball a lot. And I feel like if that happens, then we start just really try to still force the way we want to play. You can end up a few points behind, and you're chasing the game. And I think if you get behind against Italy, they bring on that bench, they're just going to make it stuffy, and you're going to really struggle. So yeah, the more I'm talking about it, the more nervous I'm getting, Tim. Geez, so I was quite confident before I came on this, and I'm talking myself into us getting beat. What's going on?
No, I think you're in good shape. I think it's still favourites. And just to sort of back up what you said there about that South Africa performance, I was so impressed with Scotland's physicality in particular in that game against South Africa. They genuinely won the physical battle for a long portion of that game and didn't quite get the rewards on the scoreboard. And then as soon as South Africa scored, it kind of really went away at the end. But for a long period of that game, I thought they were the better side.
Yeah, and I think that was something that, like, if you look back to the World Cup, we lost the physical battle against South Africa convincingly. Even though, like, I think since I don't know if you've watched like the Chasing the Sun documentary, like Jesse Creel and stuff have said, like, that was one of the most physical games they played. Like, it was brutally hard. But I still think South Africa got the edge. Ireland definitely got the edge against us. These blew us away. So I think maybe that's been a point of, like, kind of, basically a work on for us, and I think we showed it against South Africa, like you said, in every physical aspect, from carrying to on the defensive line to the breakdown. So hopefully we've carried that into. I think the pack suggests that it is going to be tilted towards that, because I mean, again, you've got guys like Johnny Gray and Ferguson. Not that Dempsey isn't physical, of course he is, but he is more of that silky number 8 that's running lines and carrying things, whereas Ferguson is more like running down your nasal passage. You know exactly what you're getting with him, and the same in defence as well. So yeah, hopefully we can, because I think it makes a huge difference to the way we play. Again, it sounds obvious, but it makes a huge difference when we can get that little bit more of an edge, because it gives us that platform to really sling the ball around. I think we've done well without as dominant a platform in the past, the way that we've managed to play. But I think if we can get that little bit more of an edge, then we're going to be dangerous and hard to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, it's predictions time, Chris. We've got to put our money where our mouth is now and decide who's going to win and by how much. Take it away. You go first.
I'll go first. Okay, I'm going to say Scotland by 10.
Scotland by 10. Okay. I think it might be a little bit tighter than that, but I also think Scotland will win. I think if Italy had come off the back of last year's Six Nations in that kind of form, I think it would have been even closer than that. It would have been very hard to pick. But because of their autumn, I think they're just a little bit behind and they might struggle to hit the ground running in this first game. And I also don't think the disruption to the Scottish squad with Tuipulotu not being there is going to be as big as people think. So I think Scotland are going to probably continue to perform quite strongly. I think Scotland, but by less than 7. I'm going to go 27-24.
27-24. Okay. I think I'll go, if I go out a score, I'll go 34-24. I think we'll pull it. I think we'll get over 30 points. I would say that.
Yeah,
that's what I'm going with.
the weather's fair, so there should be some good rugby played. Either way, people at home, that's what we think. But what do you think? Have we got it right? Have we got it wrong? Do you think Italy are going to win? And any players that we didn't mention that you think are going to play a massive role on Saturday, let us know in the comments down below, and we'll join you there for a friendly conversation. Give this video a thumbs up while you're down there, if you don't mind. It helps other people find it. Chris, thank you so much for your time and expertise today. That was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay, and people at home, you can subscribe there. You can watch that one next. And don't forget to get out and play.